need any introduction. He's a renowned figure in the print and broadcast journalism in India. He has decades, over 3 decades of experience in editorial and management in print and electronic media across not just Asia, but 3 continents. He has worked in Delhi, London, Boston, and Hong Kong with leading news organizations such as NDTV, BBC, Public Radio International. Recipient of several prestigious journalism awards, Mr. Pachauri currently runs a digital news platform called gonewsindia.com. For over 2 years, he has also worked as communications advisor to the Prime Minister of India, Dr. Manmohan Singh, assisting his office in managing national and international media. Over to you, Mr. Pachauri.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, UNESCO, for organizing this. Thank you very much, NDLI, for giving in your expert inputs and giving us a context of what we are going to talk about. Information, as we know, is very crucial for human race. As we speak right now, there are 41 million of WhatsApp messages being exchanged every second. Every second, that's how it goes. So in 60 seconds, we have like 41 million messages going around, 12 million of texts going around the globe on internet, YouTube uploads, Twitters, Instagram pictures in millions. And by the time we finish with this program, there'll be billions and billions of information exchanged on the internet around the globe. And how much of this information is reliable and how much of this information can save lives? That is our concern today. I really welcome all of you for participating in this deliberation and thank the UNESCO again for hosting this. I see many faces which are familiar to us, and a lot of people have joined us on Facebook, on our website, Go News India, and all over the world. So thanks once again. Access to information, as I was saying, is it saves lives. Misinformation and rumors can cost lives. And we've been seeing it. There's a global discussion going on right now about the rights and wrongs on what we see as information on technology platforms all across the world. So this lesson is one that we have learned to our detriment in recent years. We are discussing this. People are grappling with it. Governments are grappling with this problem. Fighting a global pandemic or supporting public debate, we need free, reliable, and independent information as the foundation upon which democratic societies can be built upon. And this is why UNESCO ensuring access to information is their top priority and one which is enshrined in their constitution. Recognizing the significance of access to information, the 74th UN General Assembly proclaimed 28th September as the International Day for Universal Access to Information, which is IDUAI. And this year, which is 2021, is very crucial for this test for the human race. And that's why the rest of the UN family will acknowledge this fact. And throughout this year, the UNESCO will be holding seminars, will be discussing to people, making people more sensitized towards this. And the theme this year is absolutely apt, which is the right to know, building back better with access to information, whether it's about your neighborhood or whether it's about pandemic, which we've seen has taken millions of lives across the globe. So thank you very much, all of you, for coming together. I will not come between you and our panelists. First of all, I'd like to call Eric Falt, who is the director of UNESCO and representative of UNESCO in New Delhi, and also his RIT runs across the neighboring countries like the Maldives, Nepal, Bangladesh, and other Sri Lanka. Eric, nice to see you again. And on this day, I congratulate you again. And I also pay tribute to your work last year during the pandemic, where UNESCO actually stepped up and helped people a lot in sifting out the information about this disease and the fight to strengthen the fight against the COVID pandemic. Eric, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good morning to all of you. I would like to start by thanking the National Digital Library of India for the continued collaboration with us in organizing this year's event. As we know, today digital technologies have become a ubiquitous part of accessing information. Therefore, the theme, leveraging digital technologies for access to information, which has been chosen for this day, is, I think, not only appropriate, but also timely for the region. This region continues to experience exponential growth in the number of users who access information online, especially through mobile networks. This is obviously welcome, particularly during the period of the ongoing COVID pandemic, where millions of students in particular are dependent on these networks to access essential educational resources. And we know in our connected world that leveraging digital technologies for accessing information is also important to more generally enhance freedom of expression, cultural and linguistic diversity, and it is also useful to build inclusive societies. We see also that amid this phenomenal growth of access to digital technologies and online information, there are persisting disparities between population groups in our society. The divide in digital technologies and information reach continues to adversely affect, in particular, rural populations, women and girls, persons with disabilities, minority language speakers, and other marginalized groups. In the same vein, the lack of digital skills has become a significant barrier to accessing online information for these communities. So UNESCO, among others, is working with its partners to roll out media and information literacy programs to specifically equip young people, such as students, with the necessary skills to productively use digital technologies and minimize harmful exposure. I'm sure that will be one of the topics that will be discussed. The right to access information provides the avenue for also localizing, I would say, the sustainable development goals within a country or within a context. And here perhaps I should mention that in Sri Lanka, we are collaborating with the UNDP, the UN Development Program, to develop an online tracker for the country to monitor and report the implementation of sustainable development goals at national level. Future partnerships with civil society will facilitate the development of skills and tools for grassroots communities, just like we're doing there, I think, to understand, monitor, and report on the progress of the SDGs at the local level. I'm sure there again that this will be one of the topics of discussions as a number of initiatives by our experts will be presented today. The United Nations International Decade of Indigenous Languages, which is going to take place between 2022 and 2032, so we'll start in a few months, will present also an opportunity to all of us to focus our attention on the importance of producing and preserving multilingual information for public access. Achieving this goal would overcome a major obstacle to sustainable development and building peaceful and inclusive societies. There again, UNESCO supports the development of digital systems that promote access to multilingual information, especially through libraries and archives. And that is why our partnership with the National Digital Library of India is important. It has contributed to the development of digital libraries and archives also in South Asia through conferences, advocacy, and training. All in all, the advancement of digital technologies, I think I should say, has increased the influence of another aspect, which is the influence of artificial intelligence on online information systems. artificial intelligence holds a huge potential for the progress of humanity and can be used to determine the way we gather and access information, as well as interact with each other, to unlock this potential and minimize the inherent risks. I would advocate for a human-centered approach, which is required in the design of legal and regulatory frameworks to ensure also that artificial intelligence systems respect human rights. This is the more potentially negative aspect of artificial intelligence. We know that inclusive and participatory processes are needed to mobilize the collective intelligence of communities to ensure that voices and concerns of disadvantaged groups are heard and that they're involved in key decision making. So we're looking forward to future engagements with our partners in the region to ensure that advances in artificial intelligence are in line with international ethical standards that strengthen freedom of expression and universal access to information. In our region, the majority of countries have enacted their right to information laws, and the remaining countries are, of course, encouraged to do the same. Today, I think on the occasion of this day, we're therefore highlighting the importance of expanding these laws and their implementation to build strong institutions for sustainable development and to uphold the vision of information as a public good. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Eric, for setting out the agenda for the further deliberations. And to add to that, we have a video right now prepared by the UNESCO on how this year 2021 will be celebrated, what would be the issues involved. Let's watch that video.
The International Day for Universal Access to Information on September 28th. Join UNESCO to build back better thanks to access to information. Not only is access to information a basic human right, it also represents a key pillar for resilient and inclusive knowledge societies, as well as sustainable development. Protecting and promoting access to information improves transparent governance, helps protect our health, reduces inequalities, contributes to sustainable development, strengthens resilience, and addresses climate change. When we have to face a global crisis, whether it concerns our health or saving our planet, it becomes vital to have what the Sustainable Development Goals urge us to achieve, namely public access to information and fundamental freedoms as part of our future. Access to Information Day 2021 will highlight the role of access to information laws and, vitally, their actual implementation to build back effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions for the public good. It will focus on how countries need specialized and strong oversight bodies to ensure that governments make information available proactively, as well as to respond to public queries. Each citizen should take ownership of their right to information to ensure that they can make informed decisions. And with regards to the best interests of humanity and the earth we live on. On September 28th and 29th, join our series of webinars and all the online events organized by UNESCO and its partners across the world to protect and celebrate our right to access information. Please visit our website for more information.
Thank you. So in a nutshell, that's what the importance of information is in these times, and how UNESCO plans to span out this entire year, concentrating on how the right to information is so important. Right, with the right to information, now people are talking about this, the human right. It should be made part of the charter as a human right, access to information for everyone. I was just reading the newspapers today that almost 60% of students in India do not have digital access, and that is their right to education not being fulfilled by the government. So let's move on. I will call now Partha Pratim Das, who is the Joint Principal Investigator of the National Digital Library of India project of the Ministry of Education. He is also a Professor of Computer Science and Engineering at IIT Kharagpur. He earlier worked for over a decade in senior management roles in the private sector. His current interests include technology-enhanced learning, human-computer interactions, machine learning, and software engineering, what Eric was talking about, artificial intelligence, which we keep hearing so much. We are really looking forward to hearing you, Professor Partha Pratim Das. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Pankaj. Thank you, Eric. It is a great pleasure to be a part of this event, because for last over 5 years we have been organizing, collaborating with UNESCO several events, and we are really proud to be there. Let me share the presentation first. One second. Is the presentation visible?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Good. So welcome again to this UNESCO NDLI joint program on ID UAI 2021. So I will primarily take you through the initiatives in National Digital Library of India, which is for enabling educational access to educational resources, which Eric rightly pointed out is a key area. So our objective has primarily been to make educational resources universally accessible, and through physical means it is really difficult. We all know digital technologies have to be used to address this challenge. An integrated and open inclusive digital library only can make this access possible, which can be accessed anytime, anywhere, by anyone, and has to be inclusive and open in all respects, not only in terms of the documents that we access, but also in terms of their diversity across languages and disciplines, and openness of infrastructure, and so on. So while the government recognizes right to education as a fundamental one, and we have a great initiative to open access to knowledge, NDLI occurs in the intersection of these two for supporting the right to know. So NDLI is a 24/7 enabled umbrella digital library. It is now funded by Ministry of Education and managed by IIT Kharagpur since 2015. It provides a single window search and browse, which is governed by very rich set of metadata created on the contents to make the search really useful and easy to do. And it covers all academic levels, disciplines, and every stage of lifelong learning. I mean, as soon as a child can actually access the internet, the child can start using it. There will be something for him or her, and people can continue to use it over their life. At present, we have more than 75 million contents covering about 400 languages. And we partner with more than 400 content partners who have very gracefully allowed NDLI to take their contents and take it to the users. And as I said, it is open and inclusive. We have open access to about 2/3 of the contents of the 75 million. About 50 million educational resources are open access and built on open source software foundation. And contents are certainly multimedia. As you know today, it's not just a text that can support everything. And with this, in NDLI, we are trying to particularly promote and support the SDG 4 sustainable development. So, to take you briefly through the recent developments during the pandemic, when on 24th March, all educational institutions went into lockdown and students were cut off from learning resources, we launched 4 new services to enable uninterrupted learning and education recovery. And so we realized that it is not enough just to have a repository as in the library, but we need to reach out to the specific requirements of different user groups and support that. So the biggest of these 4 is a study from home, where we curated collections of all necessary resources for students in colleges, schools, and universities, specifically for preparation of very competitive entrance examinations like the IIT Joint Entrance, which is taken by 2 million students annually. We collected banks of questions, solutions, videos done by students and faculty who have been involved in these processes earlier. We created a special repository for the CBSE examinees, the biggest board of India, with about 4 million students for their preparation of class 10 and 12. And last but not the least, we created a research resource repository for COVID. This is not a medical repository. This is more in sectors which are all sectors which are impacted by COVID. Whether it is transportation, whether it's education, whether it is banking, every sector has been impacted. So we have collected research material on this. We have collected different data sets because, as Eric rightly pointed out, artificial intelligence is a driver. So that drives fuels data science with machine learning to be able to use the past data, curated data, and make decisions. And in COVID impacted research, that is a very key area, and we promoted that. We leverage the social media in a strong way. We are always available on 5 platforms of Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And we have promoted different services through this, like study from home was promoted with attention teachers. We did online programs on digital library, promoted the rising level of contents and availability of different resources. We particularly publicize when new interesting content is contributed, like something on conditional probability, which is very nicely prepared. The engagement is done through webinars. About over 120 webinars on Facebook and YouTube has been done with learning communities and academic influencers. Naturally, the result has been phenomenal. During this COVID outbreak, more than 100 million NDLI learning contents have been viewed or downloaded since March 2020. And before the pandemic, the daily footfall in NDLI used to be around 20,000. That increased to over 200,000 contents viewed and downloaded daily with the introduction of this COVID combat services. There is about 15 times increase, and till date, more than 20 million people have reached on social media, and 2 million social media engagements have happened. So this has earned us a lot of media coverages, more than 100 media articles, high visibility endorsement like Modi Government 2.0 recognized NDLI as a major quality improvement tool in learning. Now, beyond India, we have, as also Eric mentioned, beyond India, we have been promoting access to information in South Asia and trying to collaborate with a range of institutions across South Asia with a 3-tiered partnership approach. The first tier in this involves user engagement, where we discuss with the partner, we conduct webinars to educate what NDLI is, the user awareness of webinars, so that the partner can enjoy access to NDLI and partners, faculty, and students can use NDLI resources. In the second tier of engagement, strengthening the first one more, we focus on content sharing, where partners can share content with NDLI. We provide them help to develop their own institutional digital repositories, creation of metadata, and so on, so that they can have greater visibility. Their contents, the partners' contents can have greater visibility, and we promote the partner through the NDLI platform. And finally, at the highest level of collaboration, which we call the deep collaboration, with long-term collaboration, we try to develop newer methodologies based on research in metadata, research in support of AI in understanding languages, their scope, and their content access methods, and so on. So this is done with institutional capacity building at all levels and mutual learning through joint activities. So this is just a glimpse of the variety of different institutions that we are partnering with. There are several intergovernmental bodies, foundations, archives, including, of course, UNESCO, and we have been closely working with SEMCA. Professor Parhar is in this conference, and she will also present her perspectives. We work with South Asia Archive, British Council, Wikimedia, and so on. And in different countries in South Asia, in Bhutan, Nepal, Maldives, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, there are one or more institutions that we have been collaborating with, and they are at different levels of collaboration, as I have already mentioned. Now, some of the large-scale initiatives, at least two of them, which are ongoing, I would like to mention that one is building a national repository of open resources. Professor Parhar will also talk about this. We have a large number of open and dual universities, and for that, what is required is there are all segregated across the different universities. There is no consolidated platform to get information about that. So we are building an architecture so that courses from different open universities, dual universities in India and other countries in South Asia can be collated, and it will have a greater visibility of these open universities. Uniformization of their programs, ease of update, upgrade, and translation of courses, and so on. On the other initiative, which is going deep, is partnership with UGC Bangladesh, where we have had several discussions with them, and we have launched a program to partner with different Bangladeshi universities for user engagement, content sharing, and deep collaboration, and supporting the UGC digital library, which certainly we hope will have a lot of impact in terms of the students in Bangladesh and the faculty of Bangladesh education institutions. On the way, we have gotten some accolades, naturally, besides being recognized by UNESCO as a leading contributor to global COVID education response because of our initiatives. We have had from 2017, we have been regularly getting recognition, and we are really proud about the last two, particularly Open Education Award, which recognized our leadership in the open education during COVID-19. So thank you very much for your attention. I will stop here, and if there is any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor. And those figures which you are reeling out there, I was looking at them from a journalistic marketing point of view, and they look absolutely fantastic. 100 million hits, 20 million engagement and downloads. It's absolutely amazing. Sterling work you've been doing. And
thank you.
I remember participating in the jury of E4M Awards also, where your work came up for great praise. Thank you. Thank you for that. We'll take the questions towards the end of all the presentations so people can have a better idea of what all has to come. So we'll take those Q&A towards the end, and I will shift focus from NDLA to neighboring country, Sri Lanka, where we have Shireen Xavier, who's with us, and she's an independent filmmaker and producer and human rights activist, and she runs the organization which is the Social Architects based in Sri Lanka. Shireen has been working on this issue with different people. She's worked with the Canadian Red Cross Society, and she's also worked as the national coordinator of the promotion of humanitarian values program of the CRCS in Canada, and also program director for Fourth World Vision in Santa Cruz, California. Thank you for your time, Shireen Xavier. And today, I believe you are going to talk about a very interesting looking subject. Underdogs get the bone. Right to Information Act's impact beyond urban centers in Sri Lanka. Thank you. The platform is yours now.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, UNESCO, for giving me an opportunity to speak about, today's topic. I'm not going to put a presentation on the screen, but I'm just going to speak up from our experience. And then why did I choose this topic? Because in the whole, I had this discussion when they invited me to speak about, the impact of digital technology on advancing right to information in Sri Lanka. And at that time I said, look, I may not be the best person to speak about, but they said, no, Shireen, just speak about the experience. And then that is why I chose, when I was thinking about it and wrapping my head around, okay, how do I connect this? And this, one of the actually there are many sort of success stories and case studies and all of that in Sri Lanka since the right to information law became operationalized here. But this actually, the reason I picked this story is, I'll tell you, this is all of you know about Sri Lanka. It was 30 years of protracted war. It came to an end in 2009. So I'm going to speak about one older gentleman's story about it. He's actually in the war-torn area that is Mullaitivu in the north of where the war ended, practically the spot where the war ended. And he was displaced, and he kind of moved from place to place and ended up in the internment camp in Vavonia. And then after that, then he was relocated to a place where it's Kilinochchi, which is not his hometown, and where he actually lived 20 years of his life. And so all his life, from 2011 onwards, where he was relocated till 2020, he was going pillar to pillar. You all know about the transitional justice mechanism that was in Sri Lanka, and the amount of money, including the UN, put in Sri Lanka to actually give any kind of remedy to people who had been displaced, lost lives, and all of that. So from 2011 to 2019, this man, he was telling us he went to every single politician to get his small plot of land back. And everywhere they said, no, you're not from here, give us the permit of the land. But he lost everything, at the end of war, everything was bombed out. So then I remember, he had gone to a legal mobile clinic, that actually RTI legal mobile clinic in 2019 December. And he said, okay, you're talking about this kind of law. Is it possible that I can get my land? And the people had said, okay, you come to our office in Mullaitivu, we will see what we can do. So it was just a piece. Then he asked this question, do you think politicians and all of these people, they couldn't do anything? You guys are going to do something out of it in a piece of paper, because when you filled out a form, it's just half a page. And they said, okay, what harm is going to happen? You have tried everything. This is the last one that you're going to try. And he applied, the first, to the information officer, nothing happened. Then, to the first appeal, when he applied, he got a call from the divisional secretary that come and see me. And when he had gone there, he said, like, why, I mean, about your land, like, why did it take you this long? Why didn't you come and see me? Why did you apply for, like, file this request for information? And on that spot itself, he called his, like, the local authority people and said, look, resolve this issue for this man. And he applied in January 2020, and he got his, like, the permit for his land in 2020 February. And that's when the COVID, unfortunately, this in 2020 April. But, like, before his death also, he died in his own land. I think the why this case is so powerful, this story is very powerful, is the man, like, wanted it for 9 years, 10 years. He was fighting. But what did this piece of paper, what did this legislation do to someone? The transitional justice mechanism couldn't do, the politicians couldn't do, the activists couldn't do, like human rights activists, we couldn't do. This piece of legislation actually helped him to die in peace, like, in the land, because he put a hut there, and that's where he died. So like, this is why I chose the topic, like, the underdogs got the bone. It's precise. I mean, I can narrate many, but this is, like, he died in his piece of land with peace. And that is what, like, this piece of legislation, the right to information law, that provided for this particular person. So then now I'm coming back to what is happening in Sri Lanka and how we are using, and the importance of digital technology in advancing, like, the implementation and keeping the struggle, because right now the right to information law that came into operation in 2017, like, the commissioner's term ended in September 2021, and we had a good commission. That's why we were able to go this far as possible, like, in Sri Lanka, where the rate of information giving in Sri Lanka is, like, more than 80%. So within that context, what is happening right now? How, like, the digital platform is being used? How Zoom? I mean, I want to put up a photograph of the last commission hearing that happened on the 29th of September. The day before the commission actually concluded their sitting. I mean, I hope I can share my screen here. And I have put it up. So the last hearing, can you imagine, like, having, if the digital technology was not available, do you think the hearing, the final hearing could have happened? The community, more than because on this Zoom link, more than 3,000 people kind of, like, ask questions to the commissioners who were there on that particular day for those hearing. And so that in that level, like, in the using the platform as Zoom, like, people are actually communicating is one thing, and also they feel very comfortable because they are speaking to the commissioners or people in power. But at the same time, my challenge, or, like, what we will face here in Sri Lanka is, because beyond the urban centers, the internet connection, even today, I mean, multiple times I had problems with the internet connection myself, and I'm sitting in Colombo, in a Colombo 7 office. So it's, how do we actually ensure? Yes, it's all good, like, when we talked about, I remember when I had actually taken the Sri Lankan commissioners to Mexico to share experience about Mexican Information Commission, as well as Sri Lankan Information Commission, including, like, some others as well. And when we actually took the commission beyond, like, Mexico City, and we were discussing this with the civil society members, what they talked about also, one of the challenges, okay, urban centers, this is fine, but beyond urban center, does digital technology play a role? Can it enhance, like, the people's access to actually get get information. This is the challenge that we are facing. But at the same time, I'm not saying like, it is completely a negative, but because maybe the COVID disaster also has given an opportunity where more and more people, because they are engaging with their children, they're forced to actually use the digital technology for many purposes. So there is an opportunity as well here, like, to with the access to information law, like, the system, to take this to people at that level. Yes, here, within this number of when I say it's not civil society organization alone, but I'm talking about civil society actors actually taken. It has moved to some extent from urban centers to the rural community, and to some extent, it's also urban community are not the ones who are using the information law. If you actually track the number of cases and who are using the information law here in Sri Lanka to benefit or to get their services better, or like, to deal with corruption, to deal with the abuse of power, it is the rural community that is using it. But then now our challenge is, how do we take the digital technology from the urban community to rural community, where the rural community is already sort of aware of the information law, and then they will be able to use it. So what I'm saying here is, it is an opportunity here. It is like, I'm glad that UNESCO is working with UNDP, like on tracking the sustainable development goals and how, like, the implementation of it, which is also something that we are doing, like, with UNESCO's assistant as well. I mean, using the SDG 16 as an enabler, and how, like, to see how other sustainable development goals are achieved here in Sri Lanka. So I will actually, like, there are a number of stories. I will kind of leave it to, the question and answers. That will be the most interesting component of it. Because Sri Lanka, compared to India, Sri Lanka and information law is newer. And we have only, like, spent about 4 to 5 years in implementing the law. But it is a law that is actually used by more people, and then also they see the benefit, because other times it takes, like, longer and longer. So in that, with this discussion, I also will end my discussion with another story of the complementarity of the information law in Sri Lanka. I would say, like, this is like a woman who, she's a housemaid in Hatton. This is the hill country. This is where the labor force that were brought from India to work in the tea estate. It is like, a community that is like, in always, like, they are in between services everywhere. It's like, very much neglected community as well. So when the lawyers were filing case, because she wanted to file for, what do I say, child support, and then her husband had said no, like, he said he had gone and declared in the court that he had no asset, no house, so he refused to pay child support. So what this woman, when she came to the office, she asked, like, what do we do? And she had informed us, no, he owns a car. So use the right to information law and, like, to the registration of motor vehicle. You filed an application, requested an information for ownership of that her husband's, like, the vehicle. And we found out that he owned 3 vehicles. And the court ordered for, like, the child support, as well as, like, some of the payment for her. So this is, again, this is, nobody would have thought about it. And if this was not used by, like, in the hill country lawyers there who were filing, or the activists who were filing, like, the cases and all of that, this woman today, she wouldn't be receiving her child support nor the alimony. So this is what I say about the reason the topic's name was Underdogs Got the Bone, because of this right to information law in Sri Lanka. Thank you for giving this opportunity, and any question and answers, I will be, like, happy to sort of give you more information and the connection between, like, today's topic and what I'm talking about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shireen, and thank you for this almost painting a picture of what's going on in Sri Lanka about it. I can share with you that we had found the same problems in India. We recently did a study and a program on how in rural India only about 20 to 22% women had access to digital devices, and and they were unable to get all the good programs the government is putting out there for rural folks. So that's the similarity everywhere, I believe. We'll also talk about the digital divide, which is making people's access to information very difficult. About the questions, if any of you have any questions, please put them on the chat box. And I see a lot of hands going up. Please write them. We'll take the questions towards the end of this the discussion. And we move on to now a subject which is very dear to my heart, and with a very dear friend and noted scholar, Sanjoy Hazarika, who has been a leading light for young journalists. When I was young, those days, for young journalists in India, and he runs the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative. He's been a member of Jamia Millia Islamia, of the Center on Northeast, and he's also a researcher and research advisor to the Niti Aayog, India's premier policy planning institution. And his expertise, as I said, is about Northeast of India. Sanjoy, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pankaj, for those very kind and warm words. Dr. Fault representatives of UNESCO, Dr. Dask, and what a fascinating presentation you made on the work of the NDLI. Shireen, Xavier, who I'm seeing again after a long time, esteemed panelists. Thank you for this opportunity to share my thoughts today, because it's a subject on which I feel strongly as a writer, as Pankaj said, as a writer and editor and a journalist. For the right to information, I believe, is inextricably linked with the right to expression, right to opinion and expression. For how will we inform others with the information we gather if freedom of expression is either restricted, oppressed, suppressed, or curtailed, as we see in country after country, geography after geography? That's why I've always felt, and more so in the past 5 or 6 years, that the RTI is a tool for information gathering and investigative journalism, a professional and reliable tool for media professionals, which may take time to get what you want, but in more cases than not, it places facts before the public from the official domain, building cleaner and better governance. And that's what citizens want. And I want to share some points, and I'll take a leaf from Shireen's presentation. I'll give a few, illustrate them with a couple of examples. And for your information, I think you would know that CHI has been working for more than 15 years to spread the good practice of India's RTI law in other countries of South Asia, and as its name denotes, the larger Commonwealth, including Kenya and Ghana, because we believe that mutual learning is key, especially in terms of best practices. Now, we find that a lot of emphasis is given on dashboard transparency, which focuses on figures and statistics. But there is not enough effort being made to furnish granular information, which is necessary to verify official claims and to demand accountability. However, when persistent efforts are made, I think, and we know, that they bring visible impacts. Let me share one example here. Especially what is in the public interest, it refers, this and the other examples relate to what's in the public interest and in the public domain. Because it's not just an issue of curiosity, which may tickle the curiosity of journalists and editors, but also what is the public's right to know, the public right to know, especially if lives and livelihoods are at stake or have been lost. Now, many of us would have read or seen reports of how migrant workers from India travel to the Middle East, how many of them have died or suffered, great injuries, often in unclear circumstances, which are often shrouded in mystery. Our head of the RTI unit in CHRI filed information requests some time back, a few years ago, with a number of Indian embassies in the region, asking for information about the number of deaths that were within their knowledge. And those of us who have traveled before this pandemic, whether it was in Nepal or in Sri Lanka or in Bangladesh or across India, other parts of Africa, we would find report after report on the front pages or inside about people who died from that country, who died in the Middle East, whose bodies were being brought back in body bags. Now, he asked for information from the embassies about the number of deaths of Indian workers which are within their knowledge. And he gathered data from between 2012 and 2018. The figure that he received from the embassies together was about 25,000. This was widely reported, but also figured in Parliament, where the government of India said the figure is actually higher and included a couple of other countries. It was about 28,000. And it said it was taking measures to tighten protection for emigrating workers. Now, that last point is surely worth an RTI and review. Now, we found that information commissions in recent years are not championing the cause of transparency in government adequately. We find that they're restricting themselves to dispute resolution. And even here in this area, pendency has resulted in very slow disposals of cases in the Central Information Commission and the State Information Commission in the larger states. So obsolete information, as we know, is of little news to the requester or the community. But when it comes to a question of life and liberty, it's important that responses are urgent. Thus, in the first wave of the pandemic, Dr. Das talked about the good work that the NDLI did during the pandemic, giving access to millions of people, hundreds of millions really. We were all, I think, moved by the moving images of lakhs of migrant workers who were trudging from their places of work to their homes. This is a very visible situation. There was pain and hardship all around. There was a huge public outcry and media coverage, but nobody seemed to have the right figures. So an RTI was filed with the Chief Labour Commissioner of the Government of India, the Labour Ministry, which came back with the response that the data was not available. This was the trigger for a filing before the Central Information Commission, citing issues of life and liberty. And the CIC rapped the Chief Labour Commissioner over the knuckles and said that you need to provide as much detail as possible within a week, and described the response as, I quote, callous and casual, in denying data on stranded migrant laborers. And the Ministry of Labour and Employment was asked to order on its website as much data as possible. Now, the figures came. They were incomplete at that time, but they were there in black and white. Initially, this data said the CLC's office, that's the Chief Labour Commissioner's office, had counted over 26 lakh, the 2.6 million migrant workers who were stranded across the country, of whom 10% were in relief camps or shelter homes, while 43% were in situ at workplaces and 46% were in other clusters. Now, this was regarded as a gross underestimation because the finance minister herself had placed a figure, an estimator of 80 million stranded migrants. And this was used to determine extra ration provisions in the Atma Nirbhar package. Ultimately, the government told Parliament in February 21 that about 10 million workers were estimated to have gone back to their homes during the COVID pandemic, but most were said to have returned to their home places. Now, we must remember that India has an in-migrant population of people who work, travel for work, migrate for work, livelihood, education, love, marriage of about 350 million. And often that is between districts. Now, with greater privatization of the economy taking place, the scope of the law appears to be getting restricted. And there is a need, I think, to discuss whether the scope of this law should cover private sector entities which receive public funding or perform which were erstwhile state functions. And the RTI Act in its current frame is inadequate to cover such entities. In neighboring Sri Lanka and some African countries like South Africa, Ghana and Kenya have made provisions for such coverage, and that's a good way to look at it. South Africa has even brought political parties under the ambit of the RTI law after the African National Congress scandal involving a former president. This is how response systems need to respond actively to cases of corruption, and not by restricting the scope and ambit of the RTI as has been done in the case of several institutions and organizations. There are a large number, as we know, of RTI users in the country. That's 5 to 6 million at a modest estimate per year. Although this may appear small with regard to the country's population, we need to put this in perspective. The World Bank classifies 42 countries as small states, i.e., that is, those with a population of 1.5 million or less. So this is several times the size of small countries. Yet, despite this, the proportion of the population using RTI has not grown much over the past 16 years. And the fewer members of the vulnerable sections, as Pankaj pointed out, such as women, SCs, STs, religious minorities, and people with disabilities are using the law. And this is because the governments, I think, need to do far more to comply with the statutory duty of educating the disadvantaged segments of society about the procedures of the law. And this is where I think Pankaj and I will agree, and any other journalists listening, it's important for media professionals to use and continue to use the RTI here and elsewhere to bring issues to light which are in the public interest and which affect the lives, and not just liberty, but certainly livelihoods of people, whether it's issues of government distribution of properties and pensions, corruption, infrastructure, and transparency in other fields. It's a way of calling out fake media and disinformation narrative, which have seen a spiral during pandemic times, during the spread of COVID. It is important to underline that more and more media houses have set up their own RTI units, whether it be the Indian Express and other online and offline groups. The Indian Express's editor, RTI editor, Shamlal Yadav, who is a very unassuming person, but he's won national and international awards for his courageous and pioneering work. There is the Reporters Collective, which works on long-range studies and series which bring important issues to light. And the collective headline is Deep Dive Collaborative Journalism in Many Languages and Mediums Without Fear. So information and expression cross-sect seamlessly, in my view. But it calls for courage. Not less than 40 journalists, according to one report, have been reported killed between 2012 and 2019, and 21 of them have been killed in the line of duty. Many faced harassment, reprisals, intimidation, physical and verbal, as well as online violence, especially women journalists and women politicians and women who are active in both the professions and other fields. There are increasing levels of resistance to meaningful transparency as a way of empowering people. There are vested interests that stand to gain from continued levels of secrecy. RTI users are being attacked, often with impunity. We have a data tracker on CHRI, which blinks every time an RTI user, activist, call him what you like, her what you like, is attacked. And I can share the website link in the chat box. And we have a recent study on Maharashtra, which looks at the deaths of 13 RTI users, shows how the criminal justice system systematically fails to identify culprits in several cases, let alone provide protection to them. We are glad that over the years, CHRI has initiated and had a role in training journalists in the use of RTI for professional growth and building transparency. This needs to be expanded. I'm glad to hear of the work that is being done and used extensively and intensively, for the media remains a key bastion of fundamental rights, for it is they who can shine a light even not just on governments, but on human rights commissions, which are often not acting robustly enough in protecting human rights defenders. We've talked about the digital divide, but the digital divides and deficiencies can be met partly, not wholly, through building trusted sources of information and news, as well as better and more fact-based information, not less. Restricting information is not the answer. It leads to rumor mongering and an explosion of fake news and disinformation. And in this approach lies the future, hinges the future of democratic systems and constitutional rights. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you very much for your very, though dour, but hopeful words that this scourge can be fought, and it can be fought if the media organizations come together and journalists come together and they address the problem of fake news and misinformation in a concerted, collaborative effort. And we have seen in the past, UNESCO has been helping us on this, providing us a platform for coming together, collaborating together. And it's a tough task, and it will take a long time to address this problem, as we know how information is exploding everywhere, especially after the pandemic, and it has been everyone's duty to come forward and try to tackle this problem. We'll move forward now, going back to information and knowledge, and right to know also constitutes not just right to news, but right to knowledge and right to education. And we have the perfect person to tell us about it, Professor Madhu Parhar, who joins us now, and she's from Commonwealth Education Media Center for Asia, SEMCA, and she is an expert in education technology and education technology in digital and distant education. She has been with Indira Gandhi National Open University, and she's the perfect person to tell us that how digital technologies affect on information paradigm, and what is the regional view from India. Madhuji, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Pachori. Let me share my screen here. Okay, so thank you so much, Mr. Pachori, Eric, Director UNESCO, and his team, my co-panelists, three of them, one from Sri Lanka, two from India, and of course, the host of this, another host of this very important webinar, you say, or discussion that is leveraging digital technologies to ensure access to information. And why we are celebrating it, because of the International Day for Universal Access to Information, and that is the point important is the right to know. That's very, very important point. So the focus of this webinar, all of you, you know that, because that was in the concept note from UNESCO. But I would like to focus on one very important point, that is the future of education. That's and many of us here just now talked about education, especially Professor Das. He talked about NDLI and what good work they are doing it. So all of us, we know that what is an information and what is information access. Information, basically what it is, it's simply a news or a knowledge. And universal access, if we want to say universal access, is that everyone in the population, in any given population, have access to publicly available communication networks and devices, facilities and services. Mr. Pachauri and Shireen and Mr. Hazarika, all of them, they talked about the lack of devices and what is the status, not only in India, of course, in our neighboring countries. Though there is a work going on that how to enhance this access, that is a universal access. So basically, there are 3 points which we are highlighting here. The information access, which includes the devices. All of us, we know how it has changed. A beautiful backdrop of Mr. Pachauri, where one can see those devices right from beginning, a radio till the mobile phone. That was a beautiful picture at his background. And what, as an educator, I want to highlight is how do you process this information? That is the processing theory about it. Because we, the teachers, we want that information is just not just getting something, the knowledge, but it has to be processed in an effective manner so that it is sustainable. And we are talking about the Sustainable Development Goals by the UN. Here, I will highlight that what UNESCO has already done. So just the 2 documents or the information processing, what we are talking about is what UNESCO is talking about it. And I'm just taking the 2 information. There are other organizations, institutions, those who are talking about the information policy, but because we are here due to UNESCO, so way back in 1996, that is the end of the 20th century, UNESCO came out with this document, Learning the Treasure Within, and it was very popular and known as Della's Commission. And one of our Indian experts, one of the, what should I say, educator and personality, literate personality, Dr. Karan Singh, was part of this document. So this document talks about 4 pillars of education. And what those 4 pillars are: learning to know, learning to live together, learning to do, and learning to be. So the point, I will not make the rest of the 3 points, but the highlight of the first point, that is learning to know. Now we are talking about right to know, but imagine UNESCO already talked about from knowledge to learning. That's the important part. Knowledge can be taken, or information can be taken from anywhere, but how this information or the knowledge is translated into the learning part of it, how we are learning, that's very important. So what it has talked about, the learning to know in the Della's Commission, is says that one should allow individuals to benefit from all the educational opportunities. So from where do you get? from where we get these educational opportunities. I think Professor Partha has elaborated a lot, and one of the platforms or one of the points, it is the National Digital Library of India. And that's what this Delos Commission talked about, that individuals should take this knowledge or learn from various educational opportunities. Very interesting. And during that time when I was also getting into the education, this Delos Commission was like a Bible for each one of us. Now, in the present day, UNESCO again has come out with a document, and it is on their website. They're talking about future of education 2050. Imagine. So it is the information you say or knowledge we say is their document. And one of the documents which they have opened it for the public to give comments is Education in Post-COVID World. 9 ideas they are asking for the public to give their opinion, and they are going to act. And that's the International Commission on Futures of Education. These are the 9 points. I will not get into these 9 points, all of them, but the most important point which this document is highlighting, free and open source, which should be available to the teachers, to the students. That's the very, very important point which this document is talking about. And what do they see? That and I quote from this document, that education in the post-COVID world, the public education cannot be dependent on digital platforms provided by private companies. That's what this point, free and open sources available to the teachers and the students, it's talking about. And the second important point, which this point is highlighting and getting opinions from the whole world, is that they should be focused on open licensing and open access policies, which facilitates no-cost use, reuse, repurposing, and adaptation. That's very important point. And my organization, SEMCA and Commonwealth of Learning, situated in Vancouver, we are doing that, and we are supporting the institutions to frame these open education policies so that this information and the knowledge is available to the large community of the population, and especially the education. We know information, we have a lot of information access, but the devices maybe we are lacking. So this very important point, UNESCO is already into it. Now, as I have already stated, these were the 3 important points. This is talking about, the document is talking about that public education cannot be dependent on the digital platforms which are provided by private companies. I don't want to name all those, but all of us, we know. And open education resources should be prioritized, and there should be no cost, reuse, repurpose, and adaptation of the material. Government of India, Ministry of Education has several digital initiatives. Some of them, they are highlighted on this slide. But if I say there are 28 plus digital initiatives which are on open source platform or which are open for the information. And one of them, National Digital Library, with whom SEMCA is collaborating. We have seen the presentation. Virtual labs for the school education, we have this Diksha platform. The SWAM platform is for the higher education system, and so on and so forth. So basically, we are moving towards these open education resources, and these are platforms which are provided by Government of India. The point which I want to highlight here, again, as an educator, is very important, that how we must see that we improve the assimilation and absorption of information. For that, as an educator, we have this information processing theory, and what are the components of these information processing theory? We will not get into the detail, but very important are these 5 points. That is first, like if I say attention. Information is passed if we know about the brain-based learning. There are billions and billions of neurons in individuals' brain, and when they react with each other, the synapses are created. So that's a brain theory. But attention of the human beings is very, very important. Like, for example, the attention span is, I think, less than 45 seconds for the human beings. And what we are doing in education, we are creating videos for half an hour, 35 minutes, or more than that. So the attention span, we need to keep it in mind. And that's how the information is processed to be sustained for future. Otherwise, if we see memory, some of us, we have very good memory, and some it is open that the learning curve goes, but within a month that learning curve becomes the forgetting curve. So that's what is important. The processing speed is also equally important. The way we process the learning, the information speed, that's very important. Organization of thinking, and last is the metacognition. That is, older children can think about thinking itself. So that's for us, the educators, is information is in abundance. The devices, of course, there are in abundance, but how we process this theory is very, very important. And now the last slide, which I quote again from the message from Audrey, the Director General of UNESCO. She said, and one of the points which I want to highlight is that she said, and I quote, that right as a key to enabling broader access to data, information, knowledge, and this should empower citizens in their efforts to build brighter future. That's what the UNESCO Director General has talked about on the message given on this day. With this, good wishes to each one of you, and any questions, we will be ready. I will be ready. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Paryar. Thank you very much. And before we go forward, we'd like to present a video which has been prepared by the National Digital Library of India on the good work they are doing. Let's have that. And after that, we'll take all the questions.
Our former world, our way of living, went away in a matter of weeks. These are not just lines and numbers. Within these numbers are our loved ones. Within these numbers are our friends and family, our work, our livelihoods. Within these numbers are our people. Extraordinary times call for extraordinary effort. We are the National Digital Library of India. This is our story. Sponsored by the MHRD Government of India, the NDLI's mission has been to create a national knowledge asset, a single-window knowledge repository available in 10 Indian languages that will transcend the barriers of geography and language to deliver quality education and create effective learning environments for students across socio-economic strata. Every year of the NDLI's growth has been a steep and diverse learning curve, where unexpected opportunities brought unforeseen challenges. Standing today, the NDLI has more than 35 million contents delivered through multiple platforms. It has more than 5 million users from across the country, learners of all ages and from all places. When the virus hit India, the NDLI was uniquely placed to digitally unite the world's largest democracy. On 24th March 2020, 900 universities, 40,000 colleges, and 1.3 million schools across India went under complete lockdown. As a country of 1.3 billion, we lost not just lives but also livelihoods. At the NDLI, we had not seen darker times. Our actions never felt as important. Unforeseen challenges bring unexpected opportunities. The devastation in the Indian economy called for countrywide adaptability. As gatekeepers of India's knowledge economy, our mission was not just to evolve, but to transform overnight. Our first response to the pandemic was the rapid rollout of the Study at Home segment for schools and universities. A national COVID research resource repository soon followed for students, researchers, and entrepreneurs across the country seeking to hack the crisis. Next, we released exam preparatory for schools, colleges, and entrance exams. We parallelly ran a nationwide crowdsourcing of educational material, social media outreach programs. Our 48 million strong repository was overhauled into an edtech service platform within a matter of weeks. A feat that would have perhaps been impossible had our motto not been open and inclusive since inception in 2015. Our COVID transformation journey has been driven on the back of day-to-day agility, moving from a repository focus to a service focus. Our resilience in the face of mass closures of educational institutes was met with thunderous solidarity, as daily page views grew 5 times to 100,000, and users ranging from school students to educators and lifelong learners started tuning in to #FightBackCovid-19. Public and open access to quality content has always been our core value. At our hour of greatest need, we could open our doors wider because of our open source platform, content, and policies. As India fights COVID, the NDLI is serving at the front lines as a knowledge partner. Looking back at the overhaul of a 48 million plus metadata mammoth into an agile, service-based AI platform in a period of 60 days, our hope is to ride this transformation to further scale and social relevance. The new face of NDLI aims to educate, enable, and empower, so that not just a privileged few, but all India can learn, share, and grow despite the crisis.
Well, that was a short and very succinct video, and amazing work done there by NDLI. We must salute them for the work they are doing in very challenging circumstances, that is during the COVID pandemic. Thank you very much for that. We'll now go for some questions here. First one is from Aarti Jayaman, who's from Gurgaon. And she is asking, what is the relevance of analog technologies to bridge the digital divide? For example, during the early days of pandemic, it became evident very soon that majority of migrant workers in cities like Gurgaon did not have smartphones, yet they were expected to register for transport back to their villages via the internet. Also, their children have lost nearly 2 years of education. Most of the questions which I'm seeing here in the chat box are about this problem, which is digital divide, and how it's the poorest of the poor who need the help most in a time of a crisis, or for education for that matter, or for gaining knowledge. They are the ones who don't have access to information, and they are the ones around which all the information is directed at. Professor Pratham Partha Das, would you like to take that one?
Okay, I'll get my views, though NDLI is not directly involved in providing access, because our role is to the role of an integrator. so that any content which is digitally accessible can be made more easily accessible and downloadable. Now this digital divide, which is because of this, is grossly a lack of infrastructure. Because it is not a question of what kind of phone you have, because there are several very low-cost smartphones as well, where you can make the access. But the problem primarily, even for see from the same time in March 2020, as a faculty here, I have been teaching all my courses, laboratories, tests online with the IIT students. And a majority of, not a majority, but a large chunk of them keep on complaining that they do not have infrastructure available. I mean, there have been instances where a student has to walk from his village to the main road because the village does not have electricity. Now, these are questions that the government has to address. If you look at NAP 2020 document, there it has been very clearly mentioned that all measures, supporting measures to wipe this digital divide will be created so that digital education can reach each and every demanding students. But very frankly, I have no idea of when it is going to happen. Technologically, cheap solutions in terms of wellness, local loops and stuff like that. There are a variety of solutions which are possible, but the government initiative has to scale up to reach this. And once that is done, the demand for low-cost smartphones will go up and more options will also come over. That's what.
Yeah, that's correct. And I think at this stage, when the government is the entire government effort is to get digital governance, and we have many initiatives in India. We should think about something like what the Ujjwal Yojana we had, where the people were given free cooking gas cylinders, and I think the time has come that people are given, free handsets or community handsets. We've had a very good history about that in India. We used to have PCOs, public call booths, at one point of time when digital revolution had not happened, and villagers used to gather around that and get their information, all that. That's one which is important. But what can the governments also, human rights activists, do to ensure better e-governance in the era of digital technologies? I think this question can go to Shireen. How do we improve delivery in a situation where everything is on digital and you are talking to a answering machine, or you are on an app trying to get delivery of a government service or a product? I think Shireen has missed that. Maybe my voice has not reached, or there's a communication problem. The question is to you. Please unmute yourself, Shireen. And the question is about how the delivery of digital products and services by the government can be improved.
I mean, the thing is, I will say about that, how the government delivery service can be improved is the political will from the government to put in more funds into this area, as well as I think one of the speaker also spoke about the private, when some of the services are privatized and these digital providers are privatized, how do you control that? So this has to, because everything, all the government all these programmings have been the pre-COVID time. The post-COVID time, I think there has to be a paradigm shift, and then to go back and revisit, what do you make this as an essential service? For example, even the students, we have right to education in this country. In Sri Lanka, I'm speaking from the Sri Lankan context. Right to education is a free education till tertiary education up until university. But now the education is only on the digital platform, whereas the provider is a private, completely private. So then how do you ensure that right to education, free education? So these are the gaps that one needs to revisit. And then the other thing is also, like, some of us have to take on these cases, like, this is a fundamental right, and do you go to court to actually ensure? So this is what I will say is, like, we all have to go back into the thinking room and think about, okay, what is this paradigm shift, and what are the changes that have happened, and how do we sort of build the gap? I think that is the quick one that I can say about, the bridging the gap and then making these services available. And being creative. Like, for example, that's why I put up that photograph of the commissioner sitting in up on the mountain and delivering, orders, because they didn't have to do that, but they were committed to do that and going and doing it. So this is it, the political will and the commitment and making resources available, and then the paradigm shift. These are things that I can flag at the moment.
Absolutely, you're right about the political will. The only country which has successfully dealt with misinformation on social media is Finland, I believe. But Finland is also the country where a right to Wi-Fi is a fundamental right. And it's been there for about 10 years or so. And so it's the political will of the dispensation, is the political will. And also, which brings me to Professor Farha, the question you've been talking about and skirting around about governance issues, governmental rights, but the play is in private hands. In India, we have seen in the last few months that how the education platforms have raised billions and billions of dollars in foreign equity, but they do not come under the purview of either the right to education or the right to information we are talking about. So how to deal with that conflict where the rights are decided by the state, but the delivery actually is by the private sector?
Yes, that's what I said. This document which UNESCO is preparing, 2020 Education, Future of Education 2050, they have raised this very important point, that why these platforms are only from the private providers. So the governments world over, especially when we talk about, let's say, India, has to think about that, how these platforms can be from the government and easily accessible to the people, those who are in the rural areas. So, one has to see, it's not a solution. Like, for example, we did, during the COVID time, we did a project with the Ministry of Ayush to promote immunity among the people in the rural areas, especially. So amazing. What device we used was a community radio. So which doesn't require an internet or any other device, a smartphone or any other device, but it was a community radio which we used. And we could reach more than 1 million people through this media. So we have to decide that what we have to use. So those who have smartphones, they logged in through those smartphones, and the audio and the videos were available on what is the immunity, how to boost immunity, for example. That was the project. But again, it is like a cafeteria, which device, which thing you have to use it there. And second point, and the last important point, is the digital divide is reducing, but looking at the population of the country, definitely a lot has to be done. And all of us, we have talked about the political will, and you have given the example of Finland, right to Wi-Fi. So hopefully we will have this right to internet, or it's very soon. So that's my an answer at the moment.
Yeah, that's correct. I see. Sanjoy, you work in a very far-flung area. It has two problems. Number one is of its demography, and number one of its geography. And to have a scale digital in that kind of area, do you think that we are putting the cart before the horse in terms of rolling out a digital governance without giving people enough access and in the kind of areas you specialize in and working, do you think the digital scale should come first?
See, Pankaj, I think you're talking about my other work in the Northeast, which is on health and communities. And I actually wanted to draw on an example from that. In the past, which addresses partly the issue, it also picks up from what Professor Parhar mentioned about community radio. For the past year, I'm also the head of what's called the Center for Northeast Studies in Assam, which works on health delivery, etc., etc. But one of the things that we are running is a community radio station in Upper Assam. And for the past year, 5 days a week, 10,000 children in several districts, 7 districts, 10,000, not a big number, but 10,000 children are getting online classes through the community radio. That, I think, is an extraordinary thing. I'm not because I'm saying so or our organization is doing it, but it is just somebody saw there was this need. The coordinator at this radio station, he took the initiative. All the teaching is by local teachers in their own languages, Assamese, Mishing, whatever it is. And so that is where, this one size fits all will never work in a country with the demographics and the device that we have, certainly in India and other parts of South Asia, also probably other parts of the world. That's one. The second thing is that without infrastructure, you can't have digital empowerment. Some things matter more to people, like health delivery, health services, issues of communications, and all that comes with infrastructure. With that, it has to be seamless. It has to, in a way, come together. You can't have, let's do this first and that. If there's digital empowerment, it has to come along with everything else. You can't do a separate program for it. And I think that's the important part.
Absolutely, that's right. When we are talking about the declaration is talking about power to the people, the UNESCO Constitution talks about power put to the people. So if the power is in your handset and the access you get, it could be knowledge power, it could be financial power. I think we have to work more concertedly and focused towards this, and it's an honor to be involved with UNESCO, not just in this particular event, but also on UNESCO's very important the Press Freedom Index, which you bring out every year. We are so honored and proud to be associated with you for about 5 years now at Go News. All our colleagues here, all the new recruits, the first thing is given to them is the UNESCO Charter on Freedom of Information. I must tell you, Ezekiel Dlamini, thank you very much for this. All the panelists, Madhu Parhar, Shireen Xavier, Sanjoy Hazarika, Dr. Partha, thanks a lot. And Eric, thanks a lot for joining in. I hand over to Ezekiel Dlamini, who has been listening very patiently, and I hope that he'll take this forward. Ezekiel, for your last few words.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Mine is just a brief word of thank you to all of you, starting with our partner and co-host, the National Digital Library of India. Our special thanks to the principal investigator who allows this partnership not only to continue but to go strong, Professor Partha Pratim Chakrabarti. And in absentia, we hope he will receive our conveyed gratitude, because we're really thankful for this ongoing and growing partnership with NDLI. I also want to thank Mr. Pachori for steering today's program so well. Thank you, sir, for always finding time to join us on UNESCO programs. We really don't take that for granted. Thank you so much again for being with us today. To our presenters, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Padapratim Das. You are part of NDLI, but in your own personal capacity as well. You have always been with us in different capacities, and we thank you and appreciate you for your inputs and for your sharing your experiences and your programs with us today. Ms. Sherin Savila, thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for making the time and for sharing with us grassroots experiences. These are very insightful, and we hope we can build on these as we go forward. Mr. Sanjoy Hazarika, thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing with us your insights from the journalistic point of view, but also as a scholar. We appreciate your valuable inputs going forward. We hope we can also work together and collaborate. Professor Madhu Paha, you are a long-standing partner of UNESCO, and not only to us in communication, but to the whole range of UNESCO programs and sectors. And we thank you, and thanks Semka for partnering with us and collaborating with us for many, many years now. And we look forward to further partnerships and collaboration. You have all highlighted the importance of technology, digital technology, in enabling universal access to information. Because until we achieve this universality to the access, we'll always be leaving part of our society behind. And when we do that, we will not achieve, whether it's national goals or global goals for development, they will not be achieved if some of or part of our society is left behind. So it is very important that access to information becomes universal to build the required resilience in our communities and in our countries. We look forward to future engagements with you and other partners on this topic, and also translating the discussions that we have on these topics into actions, interventions on the ground. With that, I want to thank you for your time and for the sharing that you have done with us today, and for making this event successful. I hand you back to Rama. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Hezekiah, and thank you so much all the panelists, especially Mr. Pachauri. I think Hezekiah has said it all. It was wonderful having all of you with us and wonderful listening to all of you. Thank you so much. On this note, I think we'll end the celebration for this year, and we look forward to getting together and celebrating it again next year. Thank you so much all on behalf of UNESCO and NDLI. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.